Hello and welcome to a podcast about something where each week we dive deep into whatever it is we find interesting. I'm your host, Calvin, and nobody is joining me right now because this is actually part 2 from last week's episode on Dune, and Nick Richardson, of course, is on there, and we've got Alex from Suck My Fan Fic back to give us more Dune knowledge. We pretty much pick up right where we left off last week, so if you haven't listened to last week's, you need to go back, mostly talking about what happens in the extended Duneverse after the first Dune book. We cover the first Dune book in the last episode. This is what happens in the rest of the book that Nick and I haven't read yet, and we talk a little bit about the 1984 movie, and the upcoming movie hopefully drops in 2021 and how much we're excited about that. So stay tuned. If you haven't listened to part 1, it's probably good so you know where our conversation is picking up to go back and listen to part 1. But if you've read Dune and know everything about the first Dune and you just want some extended universe knowledge, then you could just start here. That's cool too. Let's get into it. All right, so what happens next on Arrakis?
So what happens next is Paul becomes, emperor of the whole empire.
Yep, that already happened.
And he decides that he is going to bring the dreams of the Fremen to life sooner than they wanted, or sooner than they had planned for. And so he starts to terraform. That sounds like a bad idea. He starts to terraform Arrakis. And so when you open up the book, they're in Arrakeen, and there are trees and greenery. And you start realizing that the people that live in Arrakeen who are Fremen are a little more soft than the ones that live out in the desert still. And
Arrakeen's like the capital city, right?
Yeah, Arrakeen's the capital city.
Okay.
You start learning that, the people that live there are a little softer than the ones that lived out in the desert. And you realize that Arrakeen has become obviously like an intergalactic space hub. So you're getting pilgrims from all over the world, or all over the universe, that are coming there and, making a pilgrimage because, lo and behold, I believe we are 15 years. Yeah, it's 15 because Aaliyah is older. She's 19. Yeah, so we're 15 years into the future, and the jihad's happened. We skipped right over the jihad because that's not actually the interesting thing here.
It's not. No, not at all.
And part of the jihad is religious. So people from planets, millions of light years away, or whatever the unit of measure is in this universe, are coming to Arrakis, and they're making a pilgrimage to see Paul and to go to Aaliyah's temple because she becomes basically like a demigod, but Paul is a living god. And that's book 2. Do you want me to go all the way through with the rest of, or what? How about I go book by book, but I keep these what is it, 5 things? The in
frameworks.
Mind.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
So book 2, Arrakis is partially changed. Little greenery here and there. Arrakeen has like a suburb now. And they still have they rebuilt the shield wall so the worms can't get through.
Shout out Arrakeen, Westchester.
Exactly. It's a great suburb, a great place to raise a family. Paul, and there's like a lot of veterans, like Fremen that were veterans, and they were promised, sort of like in Rome, you serve for the army, and then when you come back, we'll give you a bunch of stuff. And they're like, sick, we'll do it.
We'll give you land.
Sorry, I gotta go backwards.
Yep.
The Sardaukar, those are like the super soldiers of the Emperor, and he had some of them serving in the Harkonnen Duke's like inner circle, but they weren't supposed to be known that they were Sardaukar, right? There was something going on that I think I missed with the Sardaukar, and then it got filled in later. Yeah. I don't really remember. So that question's not going anywhere.
That takes no. I can clear that up. So that takes that whole concept with the Fremen, and the whole idea that they were raised in the desert in harder times, so they're better warriors.
Right. Yeah.
So the Sardaukar come from this planet, which is just awful, terrible, cliffs, unlivable conditions.
It's a prison planet, right?
And then they turn them into
soldiers. That's what I was going to allude to. Is the Emperor? It might have been the Emperor to the Duke, or the Duke to like his nephew or whoever he left in charge on Arrakis for a while. Was telling them to turn the Fremen. Yeah.
The Baron. Yeah.
The Baron. Sorry, the Baron. Or his nephew, whatever. He was telling him basically make the Fremen turn Arrakis into this prison planet and build up a new army that then we could take that and take down the Sardaukar, right?
Yeah.
That's what their plan was. Okay.
Yeah, so
And didn't him and the Count like flex on each other regarding that
Yep.
quite a bit?
That was that conversation. Yep.
exactly. Yeah, that you're talking. His nephew is the Beast Raban, who is played by
That's him. Yep.
Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
Batista. Yeah.
I felt like he was way too old. I felt like
Yeah.
he would be a younger man. I don't know why.
I agree.
Well, I thought he was contemporary with Paul.
No, his other nephew is contemporary with Paul.
Fade
Played
Rafa?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I might be getting
Fade Rafa.
Played by
parts of him
Sting in the 1984 movie, but we'll get there.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say in this movie.
No, by Sting in the old movie.
He could probably still rock
He
it.
wears this incredible Speedo in the movie in 1984. So the Emperor slips his own forces into intermix with the Barons because it's supposed to look like an attack by just the Baron, even though the Emperor knew it was happening and provided troops. That's why
they want to make sure they win, so they put the starter card.
Exactly, and that's why at the end Paul has literally no remorse for doing what he does because he's like, you literally overthrew my family. I have this ring on my finger, and I'm the Duke right now because my dad is dead because of you, Emperor. I'm the Emperor now, and I'm going to do disgusting things to your daughter.
And the Baron is Paul's father, right?
No, the Duke Leto.
No, the
it's
Duke
his
is
cousin.
The Baron
uncle,
is Paul's, spoiler
It's his
alert,
mom's
grandfather.
Paul. He's Jessica's
grandfather. That's right.
father.
That's right.
Yeah,
And that's a big
Because he calls Fade Ralph and stuff cousin.
Well, I think we've spoiled.
Yeah, I mean the whole
story
thing's
now.
a spoil. So if you're listening to this, sorry.
Yeah. I said that earlier.
No,
All right, so let's keep going
sorry.
into the future. What keeps
So
happening with
book
Arrakis?
2, the Fremen, like I said, they're kind of getting soft. There's one really, really cool little aside where one of the Fremen is talking about how they were on other worlds fighting the Jihad from Muad'Dib, and one of them comes to an ocean, and they've never seen an ocean before, and someone just walked in and just like experienced what it was like to live with water. And of course there are like mixed feelings between the troops on what it means, what to do. There's another story where one of them get to a river and someone drowns because they don't know how to swim and they don't know really like what the water does or how deep it goes. And then you kind of get these Fremen realizing like what they've done across the galaxy in the name of Paul, and you know, just how much better things were before Paul, because they were still this singular culture. They were still this one-off thing that hadn't really been, ruined by expansionism, colonialism, imperialism, all of these things that they ended up taking part in. So that's a really, really interesting dynamic. All these veterans in Arrakeen that Paul kind of sees day to day. The Harkonnens in Book 2 aren't really around anymore. Though, they're kind of vanquished at the end of Book 1.
Yeah, I thought they all died except for Paul and Jessica
They're Harkonnen.
Technically Harkonnens.
Yeah, and one of them comes back in 3, so I'll get there. And then the Empire, it expands. It gets a lot bigger, obviously. And by a bigger, I just mean Paul's Jihad gets big because...
But it's now Paul's Empire.
Exactly,
right.
Yeah. And he basically has a stranglehold on CHOAM, which we haven't mentioned yet, which is a trading guild. Because, one of the things that I think is so cool when at the end of the first one, when he talks about, who God is or what God is, if you are both the creator and the destroyer of a thing, aren't you that thing's God? And so Paul basically becomes like the god of the spice because he can control the worms and he can control when the spice gets made, where it gets distributed. So obviously the guild absolutely hates him because, this is something that you would not have been introduced to in Book 1, guild navigators. They talk about them, but they don't explain what they are.
They can see the future, right, and get people
just
to those places.
Courses and stuff
yeah,
like
so
that.
because you can't have computers to just track out. Oh, we didn't really explain that. I don't think that's something we touched on for someone who's never listened to or read Dune. There was a Butlerian Jihad, which was this jihad of humans fighting machines that were controlled by other humans, destroyed them, and then they created this rule that you cannot make a machine with the mind of a person. And because of that...
It's like the opposite of the Matrix.
Exactly, yeah. And because of that, you can't get these complex navigation machines to take you from planet to planet, even though a guy named Holtzman created a generator which can make you fold space. It's a little wonky on what that actually is, because the reason the navigators have to be able to see into the future is so they can dodge all the asteroids and debris out in space. It's whatever.
Well, and I think that's what I was kind of trying to allude to with the Fremen.
Yeah.
They still use some of that computer technology that's no longer allowed, right?
I mean, sort of, but not like substantially or not really in a way that makes any difference, especially not in the later books.
They use
But
They use less
it helps them.
sophisticated,
It helps
like,
them
RPGs and
understand.
shit.
I'm sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
No, I was just they use a little less sophisticated shit.
Yeah.
But I'm picking up
Yeah.
what you're putting down.
Well, yeah, it was. They used it because it provided assistance to them in the desert. Not that it would help them take over the world or anything. It just helped them live within their community.
Exactly.
So, and they were so far off the radar that they could kind of use it under the radar, and nobody would be the wiser. And that's why they were afraid to get too far homogenized with the Arakeen community, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why that's why the Ixians are such a big deal, because you know that there's something fishy going on Ix, and you never go to you never go to Ix in the series at all. You're always just told about Ix. So you meet the very first chapter.
It's pronounced 9.
You never go to 9.
It's a Roman numeral.
Yeah. So a Roman soldier walked into a bar and said, "Give me 5 beers," and he held up 2 fingers. So the second book opens up, and it's a plot against Paul. It's Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Moihim, a guild navigator, and a member of a delegation from the Bene Tlaxu, and they're all on their way to Dune. They're all on their way to Arrakis. And the guild navigator, you find out, they're in the David Lynch movie, the 1984 movie, like, first scene. Not even supposed to be around until the second book. He just whips them out. You find out that when you're taking these big concentrations of melange, like more than the Bene Gesserit do, because they use it as like a spice. They put it in their coffee as like a sweetener because it tastes like cinnamon. The guild navigators are getting highly concentrated forms of it and inhaling it. What does it do? It turns you into a giant space squid. And so humans actually start to like morph and mutate into form. And their brains get really big, their limbs and their fingers and their digits grow really, really long. And they have to be carried around in these anti-gravity tanks because they can't support their own weight anymore, because they should be in space. And that's really the most you get with like Wonky. You can ask me whenever you'd like if we ever meet aliens. And then the Bene Tlaxu, they have their own plan put in place because they have decided they're going to surprise Paul with a Gola. And so a Gola is let's say someone like, I don't know, Duncan Idaho died, but before he died, someone was able to harness a piece of his body, or right after he died, someone was able to harness a piece of his body, and they put it into a thing called, I don't know, an oxalotl tank, and grew another Duncan Idaho. Obviously, they don't have his brain, so it's just like a blank canvas. And so they have this card up their sleeve, Duncan, who is a Gola. And he doesn't have his memories, so he's just this other person. And
Nick, you would have been super confused when he all of a sudden shows up in book 2
you would have been
as
super
a
confused.
Clone, and you're like, I didn't even know he
He's
died.
not a clone, he's a Gola. Big difference. He's made with the original cells. That's how he differentiates it. It's a clone.
I keep thinking back, it's like, I wonder what they cut off. They're just like, I wonder what I can grow a Duncan Idaho with.
I think
How many different times do they experiment with different body parts to see what actually grows?
it's all Bene Tlaxus.
like the middle of the arm, is that going to grow, or does it have to be a foot?
Someone's got to say it. The wiener?
It's probably
It's got to be his dick.
It's probably the wiener.
Definitely his dick.
Yeah. So he comes back, and
Or at least the balls. You got to have that DNA.
You just need the whole you need the whole torso.
Pelvic
yeah,
all
area.
of it.
Yeah.
so he comes back, and he's just there to just throw Paul off his game, because Paul's been ruling for about 15 years, doing an okay job, conquering, kind of doing what he's supposed to, but at the same time, he's not very happy. In this little plot that they have, Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Moihim has decided that she was going to tell Princess Irulan, or Irulan, that she needs to try to get Paul to have a baby with her, because the Bene Gesserit have this extensive breeding program that's through thousands of years. That's how Paul came to be, because Jessica, his mother, refused to bear Duke Leto a daughter because she loved Duke Leto and she wanted to give him a son like he wanted, and that's how we ended up getting Paul as the Kwisatz Haderach. And so the Bene Gesserit are still up to their tricks, don't think they've totally lost intergalactic power just yet, and they're still fighting. So we have that going on with the Reverend Mother.
Don't they have intergalactic power, though, if he's in power?
No, he's not.
I guess not,
because
he broke off from
Yeah,
them.
he doesn't have to listen to them anymore. So she has her plot.
Fuck those space
and
witches.
that's her motivation, is that she wants to get power back for the Bene Gesserit. Bene Tlaxu just kind of want to get in on the game because they've kind of been sitting out this whole time. You even forgot about them. Guild Navigators want more spice. And the good thing, the reason why they have the Navigator there is because if there are other people who are prescient and who can see into the future, it actually fuzzes out other people who can see into the future. So if we were both prescient, it would be a gray spot for me if I ever saw you in person. I wouldn't be able to anticipate that far into the future.
Oh,
I think I picked up on that. I think they hint at that a little bit in the first book.
Yeah.
Right, towards the end, especially when
he meets somebody else who can see into the future, and like he gets this weird, like it freaks him out.
Yeah,
because he doesn't know if he's gonna die or not.
Exactly. And so the Guild Navigator is there to just basically block Paul's ability to see into the future, which is a really cool idea. And that whole book is very Game of Thronesy, where you're having all these plots, all these things are going on. Literally, the guy who is the Gola, his name is Hate, Hayt, Hate, and he literally says to Paul, yeah, I was sent to bring you down, but I'll just be your friend. I have nothing against you personally. And Paul's like, okay, and everyone's like, why are you keeping him around?
A Frankenstein over there.
And people are like, why are you keeping him around? He's clearly here to kill you. And he's like, I don't know. He said he's a good guy. I'll trust him. And he's like, I can't, it's hard for me to see what's going to happen with this guy, so I'm interested. And if you think about it, you get really bored if you can see into the future. So when you have a gray spot, you're kind of excited. You're like, I can play with this guy for a little bit. And then we get introduced to probably the coolest thing and most important thing, which is a face dancer. So the Bene Tlaxu have created this genetically engineered being called a face dancer, which are sexless, and are basically just like this thing of, flesh. And by touching an individual, these first face dancers you get introduced to can receive some of the immediate memories that they have. And then they can morph into what they look like. I know it sounds a little bit like A Song of Ice and Fire. They can turn into what the person looks like and try to bluff, try to act like they're that person. So not only do we have Hate, but we also have a face dancer named Cytail, who's also there and also trying to get his grubby face dancer fingers in on the business to get power into the empire. And all the while, this is the shortest book in the whole entire series. All the while,
I asked for a brief synopsis.
How could
the whole fucking book.
How could I leave any of this out? All the while, this is literally like the first 5 chapters. You find out that Paul wants to have a kid, another kid with Chani. And Irulan is giving her contraceptives. So Irulan is slipping this stuff in her food. Paul can't have a kid. He thinks he's impotent. Chani doesn't know what's going on. And so she keeps reverting to these Fremen ways, even though she's this intergalactic concubine. And their one way to fix it is just to give her as much spice as they possibly can.
Hit the shit, bro.
And so load that bitch up.
That's what happens. So they're giving her all this spice, and they're afraid, that she's not going to be able to have kids. Well, you come to find out that she's pregnant with 2. And she starts having all these labor issues because she got pregnant with them while she's on contraceptives. Not labor issues, but, carrying the baby issues.
And is doped out on spice all the time.
So they load her up with more spice because that's supposed to apparently help the baby stay in. Does it sound a little bit like what happened to Aaliyah?
It was like in the 40s when they just give you alcohol to cure anything?
Yeah, smoke the cigarette. You'll be fine. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Does that sort of sound familiar to what happened with Aaliyah, his sister? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
very similar.
All these things happen. Paul gets caught in a trap. What happens? Someone used nukes on Paul and some of his soldiers. He doesn't die, but as he was saving people, it's like a mild nuke attack. As he's saving people, he gets blinded. His eyes burn out of his sockets. And there's this really heroic moment because they're in the middle of Arrakeen, in a suburb of Arrakeen. And there's this moment where Paul's grabbing his soldiers and saving them and telling them where to run to. And one of them looks at him and he's like, "Sir, you don't have any eyes." And he's like, "Dude, don't look at my eyes. Just run that direction." He's telling everybody what to do perfectly. And it turns out that Paul has had so much spice that he can see the world. It's very Neo Matrix without his eyes. And so he's seen everything in these shades of blue shapes, which are manifestations of the spice. And he can just see the future. He's just so good at it, blind. And it freaks every single person out because they're like, all right, this guy is legitimately God. Like, oh my God, he does not need eyes and he can see. What more proof do you need? And that happens. It gets really wonky. And the entire time he's having these dreams, which is very Star Wars-esque, that Chani's going to die. And all he wants to do is save Chani. All he wants to do is save Chani. She goes into labor in one of the seiches, or the seiches, however they pronounce it for you guys, out in the middle of the desert, gives birth to 2 babies, and she dies as she's giving birth. I know that sort of sounds like Star Wars.
And boom, Luke and Leia conquer the
She's
Emperor.
like my favorite person in the entire story.
So I wanted to get to that, who your favorite characters were, but I guess we can talk about that afterwards. So while he goes there, he's blind. Scytale, who is a face dancer, is there, disguised as one of the Fremen. And he steals one of the babies, wants to kill the baby, threatens to, and gets killed by Aaliyah. And while that's happening, you find out that both of Paul's kids with Chani are born awoken. So they both are born like Aaliyah is. So they have the multiple lives. However, it's a boy and a girl named Leto and Ganima, and Leto the second is also a Kwisatz Haderach because he's a man. And so the book ends with Paul knowing that his kids are born. He says to Aaliyah, you control the Empire. He says to Stilgar, you control my children. And he walks out into the middle of the desert as a blind man, because in the Fremen culture, if someone becomes blind, they walk out into the desert and are given to Shai-Hulud. And that's the way the second book ends. And that's why people hate the second book, because you see Paul as the intergalactic emperor, and then you see Paul as a blind man walking through the desert with his wife dead.
But that's interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic.
That's
great.
That's why Empire Strikes Back is everybody's favorite Star Wars movie. I mean, obviously not yours, but the vast majority of Empire Strikes Back is because the rebels just get the shit beat out of them, and Luke gets the shit beat. Everybody, all of these heroes from the first one are now on their last leg, and you have to see how they're going to rebound from that. And that is more interesting than a hero just winning and winning and winning.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and one thing I forgot at the very end, Hate, who is trying to help defend Paul in any way that he can, and Paul's reaction to Chani dying triggers something in Hate's. You find out that the Tlaxu, because they engineered him, gave him a involuntary, I guess, impulse that when Paul sees the death of Chani, Hate just automatically has to kill Paul. And that's like, so Hate like runs to do it. And as he goes to do it, he looks at Paul in the face, and his consciousness is restored from the original Duncan. And Duncan is reawoken, and he's like, I could never kill you, my Duke. And then is obviously on Paul's side. But he is the first ever Gola to be reawoken with his original memories. So not only does he have the memories of Hate, but he also has the memories of Duncan. All the while, he was having sex with Aaliyah. It's really weird.
And now he's the chosen.
Yeah, you dropped that last bit in there right at the very end.
Yeah. So Duncan is back. You asked what happened to him. He's back. He's in the second book. And then, of course, he goes into the third. So that's how the second book ends.
So the awakening, I want to go back to that for a second. What happened to Aaliyah and what happens to, I guess, both of Paul's kids, that would happen with any BG who is pregnant and takes an ass load of spice.
So
then those children now gain the, if they fight for it and survive that little like astral plane fight that Aaliyah and Paul had to fight together, if they survive that, then they now have all of the memories of all of the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mothers before them. Right?
Yeah. So that's called other memory or ancestor memory. I'm pretty sure it's just called other memory. And the reason why Paul is so dangerous, they never get into this with Paul, which is really interesting, and it's probably because of the fact that he was awoken as, he wasn't awoken in the womb. Leto, however, was awoken as a fetus, and so he's a little different. The BGs, the Bene Gesserit, all of the women have access to the maternal ancestral line, which I just want to point out that in real life that's really interesting because there's a thing called mitochondrial DNA, which is mDNA, which is traceable through your maternal line. So the mDNA in every single cell in your body right now is directly given to you from your mother and your mother's mother and your mother's mother's mother. So it's kind of like they're inheriting all the memories that are implanted in them from their mDNA. Like they're unlocking this mDNA memory that may or may not be, I don't know how memory works. Nobody does. So I think that's really neat. I think that's a really cool concept. So Ganima wakes up. She's awoken. She basically is a fully formed human being. Her brain doesn't have to develop. It's developed. She's awoken. Leto, the boy of the twins, has access to every single person on both sides, male and female. So Leto has millions of voices in his head, and you kind of come to find out in the third book that Leto isn't really Leto. Leto is the decisions made by the democratic body of all of the other memories. It's weird. He is sort of himself, but he's not. They're not really supposed to access.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not really supposed to access their other memories because I kind of gave everything about the second. I'll jump into the third. The reason why Aaliyah is called an abomination is because sometimes those other memories can actually start to tell you what to do and actually take over your body. And Aaliyah, because of her unique actions of killing Baron Harkonnen, he awakens in her mind and starts to try to control her body. So she starts doing evil stuff because she's being told by her grandfather to do it.
Right. And so with the Bene Gesserit, the Reverend Mothers, when one's about to die,
share memories.
They consciously pass their memories to whoever's going to replace them, right? And because that's what was supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
That's why Jessica took all the spice.
Yeah.
But she didn't tell the Fremen that she was pregnant, and she took all that spice, and then all hell broke loose. Okay.
Yeah. So one thing, another thing to clarify, is that the Bene Gesserit have such total control over their bodies, they can determine when they're going to get pregnant and with what sex the baby is going to be. So Jessica, while they were still on Caladan, which is the original world they were on, that is full of oceans and forests and it's beautiful. While on Caladan, it gets pregnant and wants to give the Duke a daughter like he always wanted. And unfortunately, that doesn't really happen like it's supposed to. So typically when the Bee Gees are about to take the spice of life, they have already, kind of gotten to that point where they can control their bodies, and they know they're not pregnant. Because if you're pregnant, you're not allowed to do it because you could have an abomination.
Because of this.
Yeah. So that's the reason why they call her an abomination, because they think that she's not Aaliyah. They think that she's someone else that's evil from the past.
Right. Okay.
That makes so much more sense.
Yeah. He opens it up a lot.
I would think they want this person with all this memory. Boom,
they all
right
have the
out
memory.
Of the womb.
They all have the memory.
Well, but knowledge of the memory, I guess, right out of the womb.
Well, so the reason why they don't want that is because you can't ever develop your own personality, so you can't actually fight against the voices in your head. And not all of them wake up.
And they probably can't. And it's probably hard to control when you're, a 2-year-old. You can't control what's popping in your head as opposed to Paul when he's 16 or whatever. When he gets awoken, he can control what to listen to or to access that or not.
Yeah, and so the problem with Aaliyah is when she gets older. In the third book, I think is 7 years. How many years after? I have it pulled up just so I wasn't wrong with my my facts. I think it's 9. It's 9 years. So the third book is 9 years after the second, and Aaliyah is doing the absolute worst job she possibly could, and she's trying to help raise the twins. Chani's dead, so Stilgar, which is Chani's dad, their grandpa, is helping raise them. He's doing an okay job, but he's starting to realize, why did I ever listen to Paul? Look at how my planet has fallen apart at the seams because we listened to this guy. And Aaliyah, because she's so weak and because she's focused with getting, things put back in order, starts falling trapped to her evil grandfather telling her what to do. And so she is also doing these rituals because the way that she's kind of proving that she's a god or a demigod is she has a temple for Aaliyah of the knife, and she's taking large amounts of spice, and she is trying to tell people their future so they would believe in her and follow her, and she could have better control, but it's just not working. And so that's happening. What else happens? Jessica says, "You're doing a terrible job." She decides she's going to leave from Caladan because she's been on Caladan this entire time. After the first book, she just goes back. And she's going to come and check out what's going on. And she is not the Mother Superior of the Bene Gesserit, but she's up there. You know, they will never forgive her for the betrayal of creating the Kwisatz Haderach without their permission, but they're letting her atone for it. She and Gurney Halleck are shacking up. That's not really important, but good for Gurney. And so that's happening. Then you start hearing tale about how there's this man wandering through the desert who calls himself the Preacher, and he is only there to speak out against the injustices that the government has done to other planets and to Arrakis itself. His whole thing is returning Arrakis back into a desert planet, letting the Fremen go back into the original culture that they had because it was perfect, and they should have never been ruined like they were by modernity. And finally, the House Carino, which is the original emperor, they have a son that they were going to take and try to get him to kill the twins and become emperor himself, because they think that he still has a legal right to the throne. So that's plotting, and that's the first 10 chapters of Children of Dune.
Which is the fourth one, correct?
That's the third one.
Third.
And so
we need to fly through the rest of these.
Yeah, I got you. So that one, the Arrakis is terraformed a bit more. They have this extensive plot to have these wolves kill the kids. The Leto basically says,
always gotta throw some wolves killing kids in there.
Exactly, yeah.
No shit.
Leto says to
the Roman imagery.
Yeah. Just like Ix. Leto says to Ganima, like, just trick yourself into thinking that I'm dead. I'm going to find a way out of this. She does that. She tells everybody that he's dead. She believes it because they have the truthsayers in the Bene Gesserit. And Leto, meanwhile, goes to the southern pole, which has spice traders, spice runners, and he realizes that he has to do what his father could never have done, which was fix humanity's mistakes and lead them off of the terrible path that they're on. And he decides to name the future that he sees the Golden Path. And he walks into the desert. He slips his hand into the sand. He lets a sand trout climb up onto his arm, and they all just start climbing onto his body, up basically covering everything but his face. He's 9, by the way. He's 9 years old. And he becomes a superhero. He can swim through the sand really, really quickly. He's got all the nourishment he ever needs. And he sees Paul. Paul is, spoiler alert, the preacher who has been railing against the government. And
yeah, I figured that.
Yeah,
out.
And Paul is basically like, I cannot believe you did this. I didn't have the balls to do it. I wish you hadn't done it. And he said, Father, my future isn't important. What's important is the future of humanity. Because Leto also saw this future of him getting a wife, settling down, being happy. Instead, he goes, no, I'm going to torment myself. And he becomes God Emperor. He can no longer have kids, but he marries his sister so they can stay in the Atreides line. The Carino guy, who was going to try to overthrow everything, starts having actual kids with Ganima, and you find out Leto is immortal, and Leto can see the future absolutely. And Leto the second, the God Emperor, he starts his own breeding program, and the Bene Gesserit are just tools of his, and that's where, that's where the third one ends.
Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah.
This thing goes off the rails fast.
It goes way off the rails.
I don't know that it's in a bad way, but that's something.
Yeah, and so
the
series was supposed to end after the third, and someone asked Frank, like, when are you going to end this thing? And he's like, when people stop buying them. The third book was the first sci-fi book to ever be on the New York Times bestseller list. I think that's what it is. There's something like that, where it was like the first ever book to it was let me see. It's something about the New York Times bestseller list. It beat anything by Isaac Asimov to get on there. Yeah, first ever hardcover bestseller in the science fiction field, and it was also a Hugo Award nominee. So it was this massive, big, sprawling thing, and it was supposed to stop after the third. His plan only went that far. So you get to the fourth book, and you're like, what do I even do? All right, let's fast forward 3,500 years into the future. Leto is a worm now, a worm-human hybrid. He is the God Emperor who can see the future absolutely, rules the galaxy with an iron fist, and is just so bored out of his mind. Because, like I explained when we were talking about the future thing, he sees the future, absolutely. He's cemented the future. He can't change it. He's fixed humanity, but he's got nothing to do but live right now. So he's caught in this cycle of creating Duncan Idaho Golas just because he's bored. He makes the Ben H. Laxu do whatever he
There
wants.
you go, Nick. Book 4 is for you.
God Emperor.
All Duncan
Shit
Idahos all
is
the time.
weird,
I
dude.
love God Emperor of Dune. It's a weird book. It's a one-off. It was supposed to be 7 books, a trilogy, a middle part, and a trilogy that connected the 2 trilogies. For being a bridge book, it's awesome. He has this weird, like, jacked thing of women, which is his intergalactic army called Fish Dancers. And some of them are lesbians. Some of them aren't. It's really weird. He tries to breed them with people to make better people. And he falls in love with this chick from Ix. And he can't really, he knows it's a bad idea to fall in love with her. Doesn't care. 1700th generation descendant of his sister named Siona is leading a rebellion against him on Arrakis. Arrakis is completely terraformed with national parks of desert, and the rest of it is just forest. So he can only really thrive in an eighth of the surface, if that even. And I love Leto. The 4th one is so philosophical. It's so much of people standing around and talking, but I love it. I think it has a lot to do with like how to rule, cycles of cultures and cycles of civilizations. His whole thing is, I'm going to make people feel so constrained and so boxed in that the moment that I'm gone, they're going to explode across the galaxy, do everything they can to grow culturally and scientifically and all of that stuff. I'm saving them from themselves. I have created the golden path. And it ends with Siona and this Duncan Idaho, the newest one, falling in love and killing Duke Leto II. They push him into a river, and he's not supposed to get into water because he's a sandworm. All of the sand trouts leave his body, and this weird, like, decrepit 9-year-old body is like standing in a rock cavern and dying, and that's how the 4th one ends.
Damn.
Okay.
I'm told you, I'm trying to give you the most succinct way I can, but there's so much that happens. 5th one is called Heretics. You get introduced to a new Duncan who's 7 that hasn't been reawoken yet, but he's really important for some reason. The Ben H. Laxu are wildin' off on their own. They're doing crazy things. Bene Gesserit have gotten their powers back. There's one who is not who's not the Mother Superior, but her name is Darwi O'Drade, Odrade. Everyone pronounces it Odrade. It's supposed to be pronounced Odrade because it's supposed to sound like Atreides. Arrakis is now called Rakis. Arrakeen is now called Keen. Caladan is now called Dan. Getty Prime has a totally different name. And it's 1,500 years into the future from God Emperor. So we've made a 5,000-year time jump from the first book. And you realize that the Bene Gesserit have this massive force that they're fighting called Jesus Christ. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, that's what we call it.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Give me 1 second. Good Lord. Oh no, that's Heretics.
So we are so far away from Muad'Dib at this point.
Yeah, Muad'Dib is a legend at this point. He is seen by many as a god. His son is seen as a tyrant. They actually refer to him as the tyrant. Everybody hates Leto II, which makes his story even more tragic because he did what was right for humanity. He did what he should have done, what was his responsibility. He did not act selfishly in the slightest. They're fighting the Honored Matres, and they're very mysterious. You don't know where they came from. They are very similarly matched to the Bene Gesserit, but they're going to planets, taking them over and killing every single Bene Gesserit that they can, but not before torturing them and asking them how they can control their body's chemistry because they don't know how to do that. And you come to find out that the Bene Gesserit, because they can control their chemistry, can actually fight off diseases and viruses. And the Honored Matres are currently going through a plague. And some force, it's called the scattering. So when Leto II died and they did their whole ding-dong, the wicked worm is dead, everybody flew off into the galaxy, into the unknown regions that had never been explored, started their own civilizations, started their own, their own trading systems, their own networks, and those people are called the scattering. You have no idea where they went. The Bene Gesserit sent out thousands of women, and they never came back, and they never got a word back from them. And there's all these cultures and civilizations that you know nothing about. And so the Honored Matres come back. They're very violent. They're, these crazy, crazy women. And the big thing that makes them different than the Bene Gesserit is that they're ruthless because they control men sexually. So they give him the best like slop top dome 3000 the guy has ever had, and the guy will do literally anything they want for the women. And my God, if that is not the most honest thing Frank Herbert has ever written in his life, I don't know what is.
She just sucked my dick
yeah,
so
it's like,
good, man.
I will literally do whatever you want, lady.
Had to drop a nuke on those guys.
I had to. So Darwy looks like Lady Jessica. You find out that the Bene Gesserit had a general who was a man whose name was Miles Tegg, who looks a lot like Duke Leto. You find out, a big spoiler, you find out that Darwy is Miles' daughter. That, because of the breeding program, you're not supposed to know. And all the while, there's a new girl on Arrakis named Shiana, who's supposed to be named after Siona or have a name like Siona. And Shiana can actually talk to worms. And the reason why that's important is because I totally forgot to mention this. This is a very big plot from the fourth. When Leto turned into a worm and terraformed the planet, he let all the other worms die. So he was the only worm in existence. He was the only one who could control the spice. And so he was actually a god. And when he died, all the sand trout left his body, and they started terraforming Arrakis back into a desert. So there are worms again, but he made the point that no matter what, a little bit of his consciousness will always be present in the worms. So just like the original Fremen who treated the worms like God, he will always be God because he will always be the worms, but just a piece of him. And so you find out that Shiana can actually communicate with that piece of the consciousness, and she can control the worms like telepathically, basically. She dances for him, and they do whatever she wants. So immediately she becomes a Bene Gesserit, obviously, and Duncan, who was created as a Ghola by the Tlaxu, like I said, they're trying to get their hands on things. They know that they have to awaken him, and they don't know how they're going to do it. And at first they think that they're going to do it by having one of the Bene Gesserit have sex with him to awaken his memories, by traumatizing him as a kid and, making him lose his virginity and basically get raped. And they don't end up doing that, but Miles Tegg, who looks like Duke Leto, helps awaken his memories. He's basically like, 7 or 8. He has sex with an honored matre because she was like, oh, well, she captured him. She's like, I'm going to take control of you. Turns out that the Bene Tlaxu imprinted on him that he was the best male lover in the entire universe, and he could break the honor matre's control and actually make them want to do anything that he wanted. I know that it all sounds convoluted, but it makes total sense in context.
Absolutely.
And so this one ends with that the honor matre that tried to break him basically being captured. The honor matre's winning, going to Arrakis, blowing the planet up, but not before Shiana was able to lead a sandworm onto the ship, a no ship. And so no ships are things that the Ixians created that could not be tracked by the God Emperor. So they use technology to basically stop his powers. Yeah, his clairvoyance, his prescience. And so there's a no ship. They're using it to flee from the Honor Matres. They fly back to the capital of the Bene Gesserit Empire called Chapter House, and they park the no ship there. They don't let Duncan leave, just in case. There are no ships around the planet, so it can't be found. And the book ends with Darwy becoming the Mother Superior, and them saying like, "Sick, we're going to wait it out on Chapter House." That's how that ends. You get this big setup for this war between the Honor Matres. You know that they're being chased by someone out from the scattering, but you don't know who, and it's really scary because you're like, man, if these chicks can beat the Bene Gesserit that quick, and they're afraid of somebody, I don't want to know who they're afraid of. But you know that those people are coming. And that puts us into the sixth and final book that Frank Herbert wrote called Chapter House, which is a bunch of waiting around until Darwy dies. And then Merbella, who was the honored matre that Duncan broke, she was getting trained as a Bene Gesserit, and Darwy decides that Merbella is the best person to take her place, so Merbella becomes the Bene Gesserit, but the Mother Superior. But that's at the same exact time that they're battling the Honor Matres, and the way that their hierarchy works is that if you kill the leader, you become the leader. So Merbella simultaneously becomes the leader of the Honor Matres and the Bene Gesserit, and you don't know what's going on, and you're like, okay, cool, I guess she's gonna like make them band together and fight whoever this outside enemy is. You still have no idea who it is. And the book ends with Duncan on the No ship with Shiana, even though he had been in this like very passionate relationship with Marbella this entire time. Duncan, who is prescient because he's been taking a lot of spice, looks out into the folds of space, sees these two beings named Daniel and Marty that are like basically look like the old picture of the farmer holding the pitchfork with his wife. They say something to him, which he thinks is odd, and then he flies off into space to outrun the Honored Matres because they don't want to mix with the Bene Gesserit. That's how Frank Herbert left the series before he died.
Do you think there was supposed to, I mean, obviously he probably had more, but do you think he was planning on putting more into it?
Yeah, no, he died early. He
Okay.
Yeah, so basically what happens is, I mentioned earlier that his wife was working for a long time to support him. Her name was Beverly. She was the love of his life. 2 of his kids were with her. He had 2 boys and a girl. The oldest one was the first boy, and I think his name was Bruce. And Bruce was gay. He ended up dying from AIDS. And Frank, in the beginning, because you know how Harkonnen is gay, but like a villain. So people had a problem with that. The Baron Harkonnen in the first book. They're like,
well, but wasn't he also, it wasn't just that he was gay, he was also into like super young boys.
He's like a pedophile.
He was a pedophile, yeah. And so people were like, well, how come the only character who's gay in your book in the future is a pedophile and evil? And he's like, that's just how it is. And so people called him homophobic.
It's just how the future is.
That's how the future is, bro. Deal with it. People called him...
If you're around 15,000 years.
Yeah, exactly.
That's on you.
Hit me up.
Hit me up. But so when everything happened with his first son, he kind of turned over a new leaf. He kind of that's why the fish dancers, some are lesbians, because he's like, oh, I guess I'm cool with it. I mean, not to sound like that guy, but it was 1965. Like, it wasn't as accepted then as it is now. And
right.
So that happened, and then as he was writing Heretics, he based all the strong women characters off of his wife, because he had nothing but respect for his wife, and no respect for my voice cracking like it just did. And the whole thing is Beverly, his wife, got sick, so he spent a lot of money to buy a house in Hawaii because it was supposed to help her health, and it didn't. Basically wasted all of his money down there. And he was trying to write Heretics in Chapter House and the third one during traveling back and forth between the Pacific Northwest and Hawaii while his wife was dying. Tell me that was ever a good idea.
Yeah.
Beverly dies in the late 80s. He is absolutely crushed and torn. He has like no desire to write, and he passes away in the early 90s. So we never got the 7th and final Dune book, which, as any Dune fan will tell you, was going to be the greatest book of all time. It was going to sell more copies than the Bible, and there was going to be no reason to write any more books because it was going to be the best book ever. And we never got that. And so we had like the world's biggest...
That's exactly what a Song of Ice and Fire think about the Winds of Winter and A Dream from Spring.
That's what I said. We're going to have so much in common when George R. R. Martin dies and you don't get the last book. It's going to be the same exact thing with Frank. And so
we're not going to get the 6th
exactly.
book, man. He's going to fucking die without that.
George has still got 2 books to go.
Yeah, he's not going to get there. But the whole thing is Daniel and Marty was this big question mark. And it was heavily, heavily hinted at that Daniel, because the Tlaxu just go off the rails. You learn so much about them. Their culture is awesome. You find out that they're basically immortal because they just keep creating new versions of themselves. But you find out with the face dancers, the face dancer, genetic technology gets so good that they can take all the memories of a person. And everybody was positive that Daniel and Marty, the old couple, were face dancers that had been around since 1500 years ago and were just killing people and taking their memories. So they were basically omnipotent and immortal, and they had all this information and all this technology, and they were going to be this big baddie that created this virus that could kill Honored Matres, and it was going to be awesome. And that's kind of where it ended, and everyone's like, okay, well I guess that's what Daniel and Marty were. And Brian Herbert, Frank's youngest son, who is the one who's writing all the extra books, he kind of said that he saw Daniel and Marty as his parents, and he thought that Frank was basically inserting himself into the story as this like omnipotent being, which is funny and makes a ton of sense. And so to just real quick thing on the extended Duneverse, Brian wasn't going to write anything. Kevin Anderson, who actually I think wrote the Thrawn trilogy for Star Wars, contacted him and said, look, I love the story. I want to do something. That's right around the time that Brian gets a call from the bank that his dad used to, have his stuff at. And the bank's like, hey, are you ever going to get the safety deposit box? He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, your dad has a safety deposit box. Went there, found the lost notes for the 7th book, and they're like, all right, let's do this. Before they write the 7th book, they write a trilogy called the House Trilogy, which takes place directly before the 1st book, explaining why the Harkonnens and the Atreides hate each other. Then they write another trilogy called the Legends Trilogy, which explains the Butlerian Jihad, the Machine Crusade, and the Battle of Corrin. And then finally, they write the 7th one, which is called Hunters of Dune. And they're not nearly as good as Frank, so they had to do it in 8, and then they wrote one called Sandworms of Dune, and that's the last book in the main 6. So it's main 8.
The 8th book is the last in the main 6.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. It's supposed to be 7.
It's a shitload of books.
It's a lot, yeah. It's a lot. And the thing is, like, when you talk to Dune fans, they're like, oh, the Kevin and Brian ones are awful. Duh. Like, no, Brian isn't his dad. Are you, like, you think you inherit that? Like, look at Lord of the Rings. No one likes Tolkien's kid stuff. That's fine. And so, I guess I have the privilege of coming into this after they were already published. I knew they weren't going to be Frank's writing. Like, we were goading on, gushing about how much we loved Frank's writing. I knew it wasn't going to be. So I wasn't disappointed when I picked up the book. I just wanted to know how the story ended. If the story ended the way that Frank intended and they used his notes, to the T, not where I thought it was going to go, but okay. If they changed it, then they're the worst. I don't know what to tell you. That's kind of where you sit with it.
The worst. The worst in the world.
Yeah, they kind of suck. If that's what they want. If not, the story's fine and you enjoy it and you're like, okay, I get it. This was good. It really goes off the rails, and I can tell you that Paul is not the main character of the Dune series, even though Paul may come back in the 7th book. Leto the Second is not the main character in the Dune series, even though he might also come back in the 7th book. Duncan. It's Duncan. Your boy Duncan.
Apparently.
He's the main character. He's the only character that's in every book.
That's why we just make 100 clones of him. Yeah.
So, I'll stop there. We can do the other questions real quick about the movies. I don't want to go too long.
Well, first of all, Nick, did any of that change your mind? Or are you going to go read any more of it?
Yes, I certainly am.
Let's go.
You have passionately talked me into this.
At least Messiah.
Honestly,
I'm at least in for 2 and 3 now. Maybe not right away. I still want to finish Hitchhiker's Guide first, but I'm definitely in for 2 or 3 to see kind of the Atreides line solve itself, and then that may lead me further to, like, once I get to the end of 3, I might go, well, I got to see what happens to Fishman now. Now that he's a 9-year-old kid again.
I'll kind of trail off, so I'm going to read till I get bored.
That's good. Yeah,
that's
what I was going to do. I haven't gotten bored yet.
That was my and that was my thing with A Song of Ice and Fire. Is I was like, okay, I just want to fill in my gaps, and then I'm like, okay, now I just got to reread it all the time because it's fucking awesome and read everything about it. So
I literally was like,
it's possible that happens.
I was literally like, you know what? I'll read until there's the big man worm thing. That's so weird. It's not going to make any sense. And now the fan arts of Duke Leto God Emperor Leto II are of him as a giant word, or like my background from my computer. Like, I love the 4th one. So
have we got a Suck My Fan Fic on Dune yet?
No, we haven't, because I don't want to ruin it. I feel like every time we do a fanfic, unless you find a really well written one, it just ruins it. And like, there are plenty of basically, I have read very long fanfics of Dune. They're called the Brian and Kevin books. Zing. But no, like,
wow, shots fired.
Shots fired, boys. Gotcha. As I sit here with every single one of the books they've published in the Duneverse sitting on my shelf right now, of course, I hate them. But no, it's one of those things where it's like, I like the main 6 so much. I think they're perfect. Like I said, my least favorite's the 3rd one. Not that the 3rd one's bad, but it's not what I was wanting out of that story. But to sit there and like think that someone else can even come close to writing like Frank did, nah, I'm good.
Okay. So
I just heard some weird ass sound in the background.
Yes.
Is that me?
1984. It must have been. Yeah, I think it was.
Oh, yeah, I didn't hear
that. Duke sound effects.
Everybody's still alive, so we're good. 1984 movie. Smash or pass?
Okay, so again, I'm gonna obviously be very biased about this. When I read, I like to listen to music because I read the books. Mm-hmm. I didn't listen to them on audiobook. So I like to listen to music when I read. And I was like, well, what's the best thing to read while I'm reading Dune? And I was like, oh, here's the soundtrack for the movie. Is it good? Toto made it. Like, I bless the rains down in Arrakis. Are you serious? Let's do this. So I love the soundtrack of Dune. I think it is impeccable. The movie, you can tell they really, really tried. Frank was heavily consulted. He helped adapt it. It's directed by David Lynch. Kyle MacLachlan is the star of Twin Peaks because that's actually how they met. Yep. That was the first thing they did together, and then David Lynch cast him as the main character. So as far as the 1984 movie goes, if you're expecting the movie, sorry. Or if you're expecting the book, sorry. You're not going to get that. There's really, really weird shit in it. You know how the book is divided into 3 parts? The movie is basically the first part and then 2 sentences from the other 2 parts. In the movie, you get the guildsmen, the Space Guild for no reason. You get Princess Irulan for no reason. She's still a babe. It's Virginia Madsen when she's young, so a babe. You get just all these things that really didn't need to be in there. Really weird stuff with the worms. They say that the Atreides have this weird sonic weaponry that can take on the Emperor and the Harkonnens because the Fremen aren't good fighters. They're just stupid, which really makes no sense.
I'm not happy about that.
You know the hot chick from Blade Runner who plays the android?
Sean Young. Yeah.
Yeah, she plays Chani. She plays Chani.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only reason I knew her name off the top of my head is because I read a headline about something weird. She stalked someone in the 80s to try and be. She stalked Tim Burton to try and become Catwoman or something. Catwoman Returns.
Yeah.
So we all read that same thing.
Yeah.
So I was looking her up and I was like, "What is she from?" And it was Blade Runner. And yes, apparently also Dune.
Dune, yeah. And they're also the best part is Patrick Stewart. He is Gurney Halleck, and for some reason he has a tactical pug. Okay. So when he's fighting, he's holding a pug. It's awesome.
That's what I never understood watching scenes from that movie is why the fuck is
why does he hold a pug?
I'm pretty sure the only scene I've ever seen that I've known it's from Dune, maybe I've seen other ones out there and just not known they're Dune, is Kyle MacLachlan running from the sandworm.
Yeah.
That is the only knowledge I had of Dune before this. Yeah.
The ornithopters, which I think are really cool, that it's their main transport on Dune or on Arrakis, they are literally flapping airplanes, their wings flap, and that's how they get around. It costs too much to animate that, so they just float. They just float in these little crafts, which is it kind of hurts. Everything that has to do with Gadi Prime and the Harkonnens is awesome. That is the best part of the movie, except for Sting and the Speedo. That's the very best part of the movie. Nice. I will tell you my biggest problem with the movie, but first I'll ask, who is your favorite character from the first book? Obviously, that's the only one you've read, but who's your favorite character?
Calvin, go first.
I don't know that I have a favorite character.
Okay.
I definitely need more rereadings to develop a connection to anyone. Mm-hmm. Just the whole Fremen village, Stilgar and his clan, and that whole thing, Chani, all of those, they were the ones I was most drawn to. Jessica was pretty badass too.
Yeah, I went with Stilgar. Yeah,
Stilgar's the guy.
Dude was my favorite character.
Played by Javier Bardem in the movie. My favorite character was Jessica.
I know! Shit, when I saw that it was played by Javier Bardem, I'm like, okay, I'm fucking on board. I didn't even recognize him in the trailer.
But my favorite character is Jessica. I love her. I don't know. There's just so much about her intelligence, her strength, her duty and her loyalty, but at the same time, what she's willing to sacrifice for love. God, how could you not love a character like that? And they literally turned Jessica, who in my opinion is a stronger character than Paul, who is more capable than Paul, even though, everything comes naturally to him. They take her in the 1984 movie and she's just the mom damsel in distress. And I hate it. Come on. She's such a strong character. She's awesome. Come on, man.
She is. And I was, in the beginning, I was very much drawn to her. And the first part before, the raid happens, I guess. Mm-hmm. It felt more like her story than Paul's story ever. And then the second part felt like the Fremen story, and then the third part was kind of Paul coming into his own. And I think both of the first 2 parts were more interesting than Paul just realizing he's a god.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
And pushing that on people.
Totally, and then being an asshole once he realizes it.
Yeah, and so, like I said, they actually apparently he based Jessica off of his wife. He loves Jessica.
Yeah.
That's why she's so well written. And if we're living in 2020, 2021, whenever this comes out. We're living in a world that you have to have diversity. You have to have all these important things. I think this story has it in spades. Most importantly, if you're talking about strong female characters and not ones that are tokenized versions and not ones that are shoehorned in, all the Bene Gesserit. I mean, good God, are you kidding me? Lady Jessica on her own is not taken from somewhere else. She is an original character. She's the strongest, one of the strongest fictional female characters I can think of, especially for science fiction. Like, she is amazing. And we might be getting an HBO Max series about the Bene Gesserit, which I'm in for. Let's do it.
That'd be pretty cool.
Let's do it.
That'd be fucking dope.
Yeah.
So I'm a little... Rebecca Ferguson doesn't...
Absolute babe. She is smoking.
She's fine. I don't know that I'm looking at her IMDb right now. She's in Mission Impossible, a couple of them.
She's a Nordic actor.
Dr. Sleep.
Yeah. Actress.
Okay.
She's fine. I don't know. I like Zendaya as Cheney. That's going to be interesting.
Yep. That movie is so well cast.
Chalamet as Paul Atreides is perfect.
Yep.
And I'm excited for that.
Oscar
Like I
Isaac
said,
as
I
the Duke
wasn't
is everything I needed.
Oscar Isaac as
yes,
amazing. That's going to be amazing. I wasn't that drawn to Paul in the book, but Chalamet as Paul, I'm
He's
there
gonna
for.
Be good. But think about this, because I mentioned how
Momoa is Duncan Idaho, Stellan Skarsgård,
Josh
as
Brolin.
Harkonnen.
Yep.
Is Gurney Halleck?
Yeah. Josh Brolin.
Who's Gurney Halleck? Brolin. Yeah.
Brolin. Denis Villeneuve, the director who directed Blade Runner 2049, Sicario, Prisoners, a lot of good movies.
Yep.
He said that whenever I felt off as a director and I didn't know if I had anything to give, I would bring Stellan on set and just let him do his scenes, and I didn't have to tell him to do anything because he was already perfect, which makes me
he's pretty
very happy. But think about this. I mentioned that some of these characters are supposed to look like characters from before. If we get the full series, which obviously we're not going to get all 6 books made into movies, that's a ridiculous ask. But if we did, Duncan Idaho is the main character.
You would be the only one showing up to watch
That's fine, I'd go. But Jason Momoa would be the main character, so we're getting Jason Momoa in every single movie.
That makes sense.
Oscar Isaac comes back for the 5th one as Miles Tegg. Rebecca Ferguson comes back for the 5th one as Darby O'Grady. You get these great set pieces. And when Paul and Chani come back in 7 and 8, Timmy Chalamet is just back doing his thing.
Yeah. Anytime you can get more Chalamet, it's great.
Exactly.
So you've probably read on the movie more than I have, because I avoided it until I finished the book, and then I saw the trailer, I think, before Tenet.
Yeah.
Was the first time I saw
Great
the
movie,
trailer.
by the way. I love Tenet.
Tenet's fantastic, but let's not go down that rabbit hole right now. We're already 2.5 hours into this. And then I hadn't even looked at the cast. Other than Chalamet, I didn't know who was in the cast. So my question is, are they fitting all of book 1 into one movie?
Absolutely not.
Because I thought that was the plan, that they were going to spread it out. And 1984, I thought that was part of their problem, is they just tried to cram all this crap in.
Yeah.
That didn't make sense.
It's like half of book 1 goes into the first
Where
movie.
do you think the logical
It's the first
place
2
to
parts,
end it?
isn't it?
Nah, well, maybe. Where do you think they would logically end it?
Well, so that's a problem, because I think he has to face the worm, right? He has to conquer that worm in the first, because that's what people expect from Dune. I think that was my knowledge of it before.
Yes.
I guess maybe he doesn't. But I think going into it, a lot of not even casual fans, just people who have heard of Dune are going to expect to see the worms and see the main character facing the worm. So maybe you do it. Maybe you have a worm showdown early, not one where he conquers it, but just a showdown where they have to get away, or I guess there was that scene that when they first came across Stilgar's group, they had to flee from one that was coming, right? They set up their boomsticks or whatever.
The Thumper?
Yeah, the Thumpers, that's what they are. And they had to run. So I guess maybe right after they meet Stilgar's clan, maybe the kind of the final thing that happens is he conquers Jameis and then inherits his family and meets Chani and all that, and you go into the next movie at that point.
Zendaya said she was on set for
writer.
5 days.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah.
I think
that seems like it's either right after the raid, or you have to meet the Fremen.
I think what I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be right when Paul takes the spice and ODs. I
That
think
makes
it's going to
sense.
end on a cliffhanger with him taking it.
The first time they're out in the desert?
When he drinks it to become the Kwisatz Haderach, I think that's when it ends.
Oh, okay.
That's my guess.
So yeah, that's
my guess.
Kind of like right at the end of part 2, because part 3 is the shortest part in the 3.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. That would make sense too. Is that before or after he conquers the worm?
I'm trying to remember chronologically.
That's before.
Yeah, I think it's
wanna
before.
say.
Because in the 1984 movie, there's this really weird moment where he comes out of his coma, and these worms like come out of the ground, and lightning cracks, and they just stare at him.
It is before, because he takes the spice when his sister's, because he joins her.
Yeah.
That's to help her through that. And then all that other stuff happens. He doesn't conquer the worm until after he has his kid and everything like that. So that makes sense. Yeah, that would be logical.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's when I think it's
So
going
we've
to
written
end.
this movie that's already made. And then your second movie is him embracing the Kwisatz Haderach and setting up their raid back on the Harkonnens, I guess.
Yes.
You can really string that shit out.
Yeah.
Make all the mines.
Yeah, because then the second one's mostly an action movie.
If you're really interested in production of Dune, there's a documentary. I have not seen it. It's called Jodorowsky's Dune. Alejandro Jodorowsky. He's some foreign director. He was going to make the movie. I believe a quote from the documentary is, because I think he's French. He's like, "What's that thing called when you have sex with someone and they don't want it? Rape?" Yeah, that's what I was going to do to Dune. It's basically like it was before David Lynch was going to make the movie. It's basically like if I had told you what the first one was about, and you're like, I could write a screenplay off of that. It was going to be really weird. And unfortunately, the 1984 movie ends with Paul ascending to the Emperor and a rainstorm occurring on Arrakis, because somehow that happens because he's God now.
That makes no.
That doesn't make sense. That it just happened.
Yeah. However, if you want to watch one, I've only been able to see the clips. I haven't gotten a chance to watch them yet. Sci-Fi did a version. It's supposed to be the best one made so far of the 2 that have been made. But they also did a Children of Dune, which is books 2 and 3, and they increased Leto II and Ganima's age a little bit. And my boy James McAvoy plays Leto II, and try to tell me a better casting for that character. So.
I don't know anything about Leto II yet because I haven't read those ones, but I do like McAvoy.
He's great, yeah.
Fucking love me some James.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I think 2.5 hours is probably a good place to wrap up the podcast about the Duneverse here. One of my favorite parts about Suck My Fan Fic is the what are you stoked on at the end. So I got to ask for our listeners now. Okay, you guys have turned me on to 2 things. One was Dune, and the other was, I just closed my notes. It was something cool, though. Oh, Doom Patrol.
Oh, I
just
love Doom
from
Patrol.
The What Are You Stoked On? You got me onto both of those. Pushed me over the edge for Dune, and then just got me to watch Doom Patrol, because I wasn't that interested in it when I saw in Titans. They did like episode 6 or whatever with the Doom Patrol. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's fine, but it's not very good. And then you guys were talking about it, and I was right on it. All right, so what are you stoked on for our listeners to hear?
All right, so I can pick one of 2 things. First off, I just want to say before what I'm stoked on, thank you guys for having me. I'm sorry I took up so much time. I told you I wanted this to be the longest podcast about something ever.
You didn't get there. Power Rangers is still longer.
Hey,
It's very close, but it was...
I literally have the list pulled up of all the things Star Wars stole. I could get into it right now. Don't even ask.
Oh, dude.
I can send a link.
No, let's not do that. That'll be the next time you come back.
Okay, but Drinkopedia, if you guys listen to Drinkopedia, they did an episode about that and touched on a lot of them, and it was really good. So if anyone's interested in this and wants to see the similarities, you should go listen to that. So I'll plug that first because they're really nice people. So I'll give you the option. Do you want me to do a brainless, mindless one, or like a little more intellectually stimulating stoked on?
I think we've had enough intellectually stimulated. I want mindless now.
Okay, mindless. So
we got into quantum physics here today.
I'm sorry to pull that out. I just had to. I had to do it to him.
Had to flex
on him. If you listen to Suck My Fan Fic, you'll know that I love DComs, Disney Channel original movies.
Yeah.
I also just love like that age of Disney Channel. I kind of lost interest around High School Musical, but before that, I kind of loved everything. And
I'm with you.
I was watching a lot of DComs.
Hold on.
What's up?
How old are you, Alex?
That's a secret. I can't tell.
I think he's older than you, but younger than me. So he should have been watching.
So he's right around the same as me. So we would have fallen in the same crowd because I was all about.
Except I was too old and still watching those Disney shows. So I'm there with you. Famous Jet Jackson, Even Stevens, Lizzie McGuire. I'm there.
Okay, this is what I'll ask. When
Kim Possible?
What president and what term were you born in?
Bush Senior.
Bill Clinton's first.
Bush Senior. The end of Bush Senior's first, I guess.
Yeah, but Bush Senior only had the one. I was born.
Okay, so just that one then.
I was born right after the re-election of Clinton.
Oh wow, so you're younger than both of us.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I love DComs. I think they're awesome. I love the old Disney Channel shows. Like I said, I kind of stopped. I think the latest one I watched was like Wizards of Waverly Place, and after that I was like, girls are way more interesting.
Way too
now.
old to watch that.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, no shit. Girls are tired.
That was Wizards of Waverly Place came around when I was like back on it when I was like you're drunk in college and just looking for something to do and nice. Disney Channel's there. Yeah.
It's like free and you're like I don't have to spend any money for this. I'm drunk. So on YouTube, you know Christy Carlson Romano from Disney Channel?
Yep.
Ren, the older sister. Yep. She has a show. I was actually saving this for Suck My Fan Fic, so you're getting this. You're getting my... I stock up on Stoked Ons because Ryan never knows what he's excited about. Christy Carlson Romano has a YouTube series called Christy's Throwback Kitchen, and she invites on old Disney Channel, Nick, and just sort of like stars from that era that were kids, brings them on, cooks a recipe with them from their show or from their movie or from their thing, and she just interviews them. And you can tell that she wasn't acting when she played Ren. She just is Ren. No, Shia LaBeouf has not been on it because we all know that he, I think, just suffers through like severe mental problems. And the best one that I've enjoyed so far was with Will Friedle. I think is how you pronounce his last name.
Yep. Will
Friedle. She says it the right way. He's on.
Eric Matthews.
Yeah, exactly. He also plays Ron Stoppable in Kim Possible. He's on because she played Kim Possible. And they make a nacho, which is a nacho taco, which is Ron's favorite thing in the show. So they cook a nacho, they interview each other, they talk. If you like all that nostalgia and all that nostalgia bait, and she's interviewing like Ned from Ned's Declassified, it's so much fun. The recipes don't even look that good. You just are really there for the interview and for like.
Yeah, I'm not there for the recipe.
Yeah, you're there for the throwback. So.
I have seen a couple of those. She did one with the original Black Ranger.
Yes.
Zach. And I can't remember the actor's name right now. She did one with him, and then she did one, I think it was just by herself or with her husband, where she was watching just some selected Ren scenes.
Yeah.
That was really funny that she's just watching back to like her 13-year-old self going through this, her first on-screen kiss and all that stuff. So that was really fun. But I have seen some of those, and they are pretty good.
And one of the most recent ones was with Beans. And he did not age
gracefully.
Yeah,
I saw that popped up on my recommended.
No, he looks like
he looks
he didn't age gracefully when he went from 9 to 10. Like he's never looked good.
No, I feel bad for that guy.
Even as a kid, he came out and they were just like,
sorry, your name is Beans funny, now.
Kid.
Yeah,
we're not going to waste a good name on you.
We're going to get you to be a child star, and you'll be known for as Beans forever.
Okay, so you can't kick it to me without me kicking it back. What are you guys stoked on? Because maybe I can. I'm about to have a lot of time on my hands. Semester's almost over.
Nick, you go
Calvin?
First. You're put on the spot. You hate it. What are you excited about? What are you stoked on?
No. I love it. Here I am, son. I am super duper stoked on Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird's current run on the Ninja Turtles comic book series, The Last Ronin. Is fucking fantastic. It's probably some of the...
So he's definitely stoked.
It is. I'm super stoked about it. I already got issue 1 sent off to CGC to get slabbed. It's fantastic. It's futuristic world where all the turtles except for one are dead. And one is a vigilante trying to basically maintain the city. And you don't know which turtle it is, even though
which one it is. It's that weird chick from the next mutation.
The light blue one.
Yeah, the light blue. That's what it is.
There's actually a new female turtle called Jenica, who is in the IDW run, and she's got the orange bandana. She's actually pretty dope. She's featured throughout that series, but yeah, it's some of the best comic book writing I've seen in a long time. And King in Black #1 by Donny Cates, who's been killing it on the Venom run.
I just read Crossover by him, and it was pretty good.
So
he's fantastic.
He's okay if he has an editor. Like he's fantastic if he has someone limiting his creativity.
Yes, because he will get going and it'll get confusing.
So I don't know that I'm stoked on anything, but I have a lot of things that I'm powering through right now, and that's my problem.
That you can be stoked on
I'm powering through a few things. Yeah. The first is we're going to Disney World next week, so right now everything's focused on that. And when you have 2 small children, it's hard to get like super stoked and into anything. You just kind of have to pick up things where you can. So the other things I'm powering through right now are Christmas adjacent movies.
Nice.
Those are like, movies that are set at Christmas but aren't Christmas movies. We're doing an episode on that in a couple weeks, so I'm powering through a bunch of those right now. And then the other thing is the Venomverse run in Venom Comics.
Yeah.
Yes, I have that.
I made it through Edge of Venomverse and the first Venomverse, and now I'm on to the follow-up, which is Venomized, and I'm almost through that.
Yes, Venomized is pretty good. I enjoyed that. That was
I read
a
few of those. Yeah.
I've been getting the Funko Pops of all the Venomized different characters, and so I was like, I should probably read some of this, and I've been bored while watching. Football hasn't been that exciting this year, so I have reading it while I watch that.
Yeah, I heard that.
And I'm
as
stoked
a Bears
on the Florida
fan.
Gators.
I'm very stoked on the Florida Gators. Trask for Heisman or
Fuck
what?
you both.
It'd be nice.
I think he can do it.
He doesn't have like the magical qualities of a lot of the like he's just out there throwing ball. He's like the Carson Palmer Heisman, where you're out there making good passes all day.
I mean,
which is
sometimes
great.
That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, he's no Tebow or RG3 or like any of those guys, but he's definitely good and consistent, and it's good to have him as.
I mean, he'll be a perfect replacement for Big Ben up in Pittsburgh. So
I was happy with Felipe Franks if they'd have just used him right, but they didn't.
No, he made too many stupid mistakes. His brain wasn't there.
Did he, or did they call bad plays? Because they've been calling bad plays for like 12 years.
Well, I think Dan's turning it around. I think Felipe just wasn't thinking.
Yeah. There's a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, let's not get too deep into that.
I'm just sitting here like...
Next week, Alex is back for a podcast about the Florida Gators.
Let's do it.
Alex is not going to do Suck My Fan Fic anymore. He's just going to be a permanent third host here. We got to replace Nick anyways because he got like 12 strikes on a podcast the other day. So
hey, put me in, coach.
I'm at 15. Thank you.
Put me in, coach.
15, that's right. You're at 15 because you beat me in fantasy football.
Yeah.
My first and only loss of the season. Not happy about that.
After I came off like a 4-loss streak.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Check out Suck My Fan Fic whenever they feel like posting for more from Alex.
We have a back
and
catalog.
Ryan.
Back catalog.
Yes, absolutely. That back catalog is fantastic. Finding Normo episode, great. The Super Mario Murder Mystery,
9,
definitely great. So check those out. Check out You Are All Alone from our very own Nick Richardson. And all of the music for a podcast about something is provided by those cats. Alex, what should we remember?
In a space full of stars and dreams and psychoactive drugs, at least you can know you can always praise Shai Hulud and thank the God Emperor Worm for everything you're blessed with this holiday season. Have a fantastic night.
You gotta stay sassy.
Stay classy.